Hello and welcome to the Captain's Table, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Berserker01 Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender at the Astropub, and this is the Captain's Table. The Captain's Table is where I bring people from all over the Star Citizen universe to talk about Star Citizen topics. And as of recently, I've been trying to find, interesting themes for guests who are kind of in similar professions or similar content making. And so today is no different. And hopefully, if you saw the thumbnail, if you watch this on YouTube, you will enjoy this. So let's get started with Essay. Who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen, and where can they find you?
I am an occasional vagabond on InfoRunners, providing some military insight, logistical insight. If you want to find me, that's pretty much where you're going to find me. I'll jump to that one. And as far as what I do in Star Citizen, mainly gun at this point, turret operator would be would be my main job. But
I
main
shoot
interest is
things.
going to be logistical movement.
Nice. Um, sorry, I'm changing the title of the stream so that people knows what we're doing because I realize it's still saying pre-show. All right. And CMDR Commander, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
First you can find us at our Twitch channel, which is under the org name Apex Crime Stat, and we just launched a new YouTube channel.
Nice.
For that, I lead a pirate org, and I'm becoming a fantastic torpedo bomber.
Are you becoming yourself a torpedo bomber? Are you like becoming the torpedo and just ramming people? Because that sounds very Test Squadron of you.
I get in the eclipse, fly over them, and then just eject.
Yeah.
And pray for the best results.
All right. So the topic for today is logistics. Last time Commander was on, we talked a little bit about logistics. We talked about intelligence gathering and how intelligence you can use in Star Citizen. And we talked a lot about logistics, and I've noticed a lot of transitions that CIG is currently going through. As of 317, your hunger and your thirst persist. Your ship statuses persist entirely in terms of repair, refueling, everything from session to session. You can now move ship equipment through your ships. Not to mention, refueling is being added into the game, which has changed how fuel works entirely in ships. Yeah, and then 318 is coming up. It adds a bunch of new things as well. So I was thinking about the future of the game in terms of how people will play it, in the end of this year versus right now, and even further down the line. And since Commander and SA were coming onto the show, and I know both of them have experience with this, I figured it's a good topic to talk about. So I'll start with the first kind of comment. What is logistics? Commander, why don't you give us your kind of rundown of what logistics is for people who don't have any idea what logistics is?
And in the simplest terms, it's getting your beans, bullets, and band-aids to where you need it to go. And it's a whole study of how to do that. But in short.
SA, any other insights for people to know?
I would add, that's true for combat support. I would say in both the civilian sector and the military sector, moving people is also considered logistics. So, and it's not just logistics in the larger sense is not just movement of things; it's support of those efforts of movement and support of those things being moved, which sounds kind of vague, but basically, you're not going to move a tank to a planet. Let's go the military side of it, without having, fuel, armaments, people to operate that tank. So there's a larger picture of it. It's the overall puzzle you put together to get things where they need to go so that they can function and do what they need to do.
Okay. So right now in Star Citizen, and in the near future, let's say from 317 to like say 319, where do you think logistics is going to be in Star Citizen in terms of like what will people start having to worry about? What are things that you're seeing coming down the pipeline, or is there things that are changing that people may need to be aware of in terms of how they deal with their own logistics from game to play, just even individually, not even with like larger groups? SA, why don't you start with this one?
Well, it really depends on as far as what we're going to see and when we're going to see it. I think we kind of know what we're going to see in the long term, but when we're going to see it is really the question because it's all about those systems behind the developments, curtain that we don't necessarily see yet that need to be added in. So standardizing, the cargo revamp is going to be a big thing, but one that we know is coming fairly soon is going to be the introduction of mass into cargo. So that's going to just that alone will have dramatic effects on gameplay. Prime example is a Holly loaded with nothing but ore. You might be able to get it up to 1,000 speed, but to stop that ship is going to take you considerably longer than it would today if it were in game, just because of the mass.
So
So
like time might start to be in effect more often than people think as well.
yeah, so being a truck driver isn't just going to be calling into a station and parking. It's going to be really calculating your load, distributing your mass. We don't know quite yet if that's going to be in this next iteration. I doubt it. But distribution of mass is eventually going to become an issue. So that alone, then when you get into environmental concerns that we know are coming, and exposed cargo, external cargo, which is obviously coming with the C and with the A, they just become a whole bunch of things to consider in gameplay. You don't want to be that Hull A pilot with Quantanium on the outside of your ship.
What you're carrying is going to start mattering as well, and as you're saying as well. Okay. Commander, what are your thoughts on, in the immediate future, what should people think or be worried about in terms of logistical, like knowing what they need to start worrying about in logistics?
The obvious answer is fuel and your operational range with that. To hitch off an essay here, I could see them adding mass in for fuel. So you have to start considering how much that weighs down your ship as well, especially if you're dogfighting. That half a second off your roll is going to make a big difference. Other than that, I don't know, in like time frame of a year, yeah, outside of fuel and then cargo refactory, and have that supplies you're bringing with you throughout like pyro. It's about all I can see, and if we're going to gate it for a year.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about logistic like support that CIG can give, because while we know that we're going to start seeing a lot more things that people can have to start considering when they're playing the game, what will CIG have to make to help us figure that out? Like, what kind of tools would you if you were to tell CIG, hey, we need this, and this, or whatever for future gameplay purposes? What tools would you like to see? Commander, since you're last one, why don't you talk about that?
It's Urkel that has the sites where all the components are at the various shops. That in game would be awesome, especially in the future where you're going to be carrying your components around. Actually, should be doing that now, but having Urkel so you can know where everything is from an in-game app, knowing probably dynamic pricings as well. Just taking that background information and just putting it onto a mobiGlas little tab would be great.
So like knowing where things are, like commodities or inventory of various places. Okay.
Yeah.
Essay?
Well, I mean, there are quite a few things. I think probably the one tool in game that's going to be most important for logistics is going to be a load planner. And I don't see how they get away with not having a load planner, because you need to be able to load planning, or being able to I'm trying not to use a lot of jargon. So using let's say a container ship versus a truck, no matter what vehicle you're using, you need to put things in certain places to get certain results. So you want like your heavy mass items towards the center. You want there's certain things that can't be combined because they're potentially going to affect each other. So I see probably the tool that I think would be most valuable for players in game is going to be the ability not just to buy commodity products, but then plan on, okay, I need 8 cases of this, 7 of this, 14 of this, and then actually playing like a little mini game of Tetris of where they're going to go.
So it's like lining up properly. And for those of you who don't know,
and also,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
As I said, for those of you who don't know, like when we talked about like loading and that kind of things, most everything in life has some sort of load master or somebody whose job it is to load up ships or trucks or planes or even spacecraft. They have to be loaded in an exact proper fashion, an exact proper way. They have to be checked, double checked, triple checked, especially if you're dealing with more complexities like rockets. Because if you misload something, if you put too much weight on one side, any kind of change movements could cause things like catastrophic accidents. An unloaded or a not properly loaded truck, for instance, could tip over if it hits a too wide of a turn. A boat that is not properly loaded in terms of its weight and distribution could capsize. And so there are entire professions. I have a friend of mine who was in the Air Force who was a loadmaster on a C-130, and he talked about just the absolute just mile long checklist they had to go through and figure out for every single thing, and just the sometimes day plus efforts to load everything up properly was quite intensive. So just to give you that in mind when we're talking about that. Go ahead, Essa. You were saying something else.
No, just I mean, yeah, you kind of like walk that in on target. The idea of being able to properly plan your load and understand there's two parts of it really in general terms, which is one, that your load is safe, that your ship will handle the way that you want it to handle. Let's say you're going to a planetoid with increased gravity or reduced gravity. That would change how you not only would load your ship, but what you could put on it. In
Mhm.
addition, there is the ability to, right now, when we're selling product, the same thing kind of like as having Urkel in game, and having the ability to look at components. I'd like the ability to look at the commodity markets around the verse on a tab as well as an additional system so that I could say, yeah, what is the current price going in this location? All right,
Mhm.
I'm going to do movement and do an entire load to maximize my cube and maximize my profit for that run. Because right now that's, I think we've all, if we've done any cargo running, we've all done it where we've loaded up a hull full of something, we are our ship full of something, we take it somewhere and we can't sell it.
Yeah.
And the ability to actually have more of a commodity market type of tool. Um, I always pull out Galaxy as an example of things that are clearly not perfect, but put a little bit of thought into it. They had a bizarre market. You're doing something similar to that. That's more of on a Moby Glass would help um, traders know what to buy and where to bring it.
Okay. Let's go a little bit further, and I had a little bit of something in there as well. Um, for to give some context for everything, let's just say somebody is a transport pilot, someone who wants to just move cargo. What are the steps would you think that you think an average transport, just a cargo hauling, person in a Hull A? What are some of the steps they're going to have to consider, start to consider as the game starts to develop more and become more fleshed out? SA, since you're the last one to talk.
Now there's a lot to consider. It's the first thing is what kind of gameplay do you want?
Mm-hmm.
The idea, it's romantic to think you're going to fill up a Hull E and take it from one system to another and make a fortune in one large movement. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm sure we know people are going to try to do that, but the reality of trading is that it's market based,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also experience. This experience vastly differs. So we think of things like blockade runners as being romantic, like an MSR bringing in illicit goods past the UE. That is trading in the core sense of it. But and then you have your Hull E on the other side, and you have just completely different experiences there. So the question is, you know, um, where's the money going to be made? What ships do you enjoy flying? Those things need to really be considered because you're doing it in game. If you don't want to do straight line runs, then the whole C and up are probably not ships for you because they're not going to be maneuverable. I can go down into atmosphere. I can, you know, they're the freight trains of the verse.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what they are. So do you want to be a train engineer, or do you want the old freelancer ad of,
Mm-hmm.
fill up your van or your truck and take it out there and sell product and move a small amount of stuff and be by yourself and drink some coffee because you're not operating probably a whole C or a whole lead by yourself.
Yeah.
So that's also a group effort thing. What is that gameplay you want? And I think that I see a lot of people that want to do trading that buy almost every single type of ship they think they're going to use for particular things. And it's like, okay, that's great. You're supporting the game, but at the same time, are you going to enjoy that gameplay? So, think about it. What do you want to do when you're doing this trading?
So like you're saying, like your ship is even just alone. If you're a trader, your ship is going to determine a lot of what you can and can't do.
Yeah, prime example would be the M2, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to move Tonks to planet, that's going to probably be your most efficient means. The Liberator is there as well, but you have to decide, like, what are you moving? Do you want the ability to move cargo and vehicles, or do you want the ability to move vehicles and a different amount of cargo? Where are you going with it? Are you going to and those, from a military aspect? So there are two sides that I'm approaching this from.
Yeah.
In my civilian profession, I'm a food systems logistics person, and food system logistics is extremely complicated because you're talking about everything from equipment to perishable goods to hazardous materials. It's very there's a lot to it. And then on the military side, I'm been trained and I've done hazmat stuff and logistical planning for movements. So looking at the variety that you get with each ship, what you can actually do with these ships. Um, it's not, first of all, the ships aren't going to be what people expect.
Mhm.
So if you have, you might think that you're going to use a particular ship for doing military transport, but you may not. I don't like the M2 personally as a ship. I think it's beautiful. I just don't think it's priced well personally. But when you look at that M2, because it has a internal storage that's protected by the hull of the ship, you have a lot more flexibility in what you're dropping, a lot more flexibility in what you're hauling. So, there's a lot that needs to be defined still. These ships will come into their own eventually,
Mhm.
but logistics isn't simply just putting something on a ship or attaching to a ship and moving it. It's about having a plan of where you want to be in the end. Do you get the end result that you're planning on getting?
Okay. So your ship is going to determine a lot about where you want to go. Okay.
Well, and
Uh,
what works for you,
and what works for
what
you.
gameplay you have.
Vander, same question for you. Like, say if someone wants to be a transport, just like a cargo runner,
Mhm.
what are some of the things they're going to have to start considering in going forward in the game beyond just I want to do cargo.
The type of cargo for one, if is it safe cargo that you could just throw in your ship and fly it? Is it have unstable, so you have to store it in a specific or contain it in a specific way? Is it going to be perishable that degrades over time? Is it going to how much is it going to weigh down your ship? Consume more fuel that's going to cut into your operational range. Your both your takeoff and your endpoint. Now, if you're flying out of Orison into Delamar, you're going to burn a lot more fuel leaving Orison than you are landing at Delamar. But going in and out of gravity wells or atmosphere, that's consuming more food. If it's a really long trip, do you have to cut into your cargo for food, water, any emergency supplies? The geopolitics of where you're going. If you're going into another system, is the NPC organizations running it friendly to you? Is your cargo legal with them? And if it's, they also consider the player orgs that are probably going to claim the system. Are you friendly with them? Do you need to bribe them? Do they need supplies to let you through? So you have to cut in more into your cargo. And then it's probably guessing how much that stuff you're going to sell for is worth. Because you might look at your trading app and it might sell for 120 UEC a unit, but when you get there, it could only be 80, depending if it's a week long trip. So guessing is your future pricing, and then it's a lot of math just cutting into am I actually making enough profit to be worth it?
Okay. Yeah. All right. I mean, that's a lot of math. That's a lot of preparation. Um,
There's a Sorry, there's another
yeah.
side of it as well, which is right now when you transport cargo, you own the cargo. You buy
Mhm.
it, you transport it. If it's a loss on you. That won't be the future of cargo. You will not be able to afford, or would it be even profitable for you to do that? When you ship things, whether it's containerized shipping, whether it's open box shipping, FedEx doesn't own the products it ships. Cargo ships don't own the products that they ship. You are a service provider. So another, there is a potential out there in gameplay where you just basically your Hully, once your manifest is full, or gets to a certain point, you make the decision, I'm not taking any more containers, and then you can transport that product for whatever fees you're charging for that transport. So there's, it's not necessarily, but there are other parts to that, like load planning, like considerations, like talking about perishable products. That's a huge amount of products are perishable.
Mhm.
You can't run a system without food or certain supplies, medical supplies, etc. So it gets in the future of logistics and what you're moving. It's all going to be probably based around a in-game mechanics that basically determine what each system needs at that point. Like, do we need armaments because we have a current conflict going on? There's piracy, etc. Do we have foods that are not able to grow enough food for our population, so therefore we want more food? So the system itself is going to be extremely complicated. in some ways and very simple in others, which is moving product is fairly simple. It's very direct, but all of the planning of what you're going to move, how you're going to move it, and is it worth it to you to even be in that business? That's going to be complicated.
I'll hit you with another one, and before we get to wrap this up as well, because this is the other one that gets a lot. Plenty of people just want to go out into the black and pew pew and blow stuff up. Someone who wants to be a fighter pilot, what are the kind of things that they're going to have to worry about in the future, especially if they're going, say, beyond Stanton, going into places like Pyro and other places? Commander, what do you think?
Where am I running away to when things go tits up? Is the first question.
So backup
Especially,
plans.
yeah. You're out pyro, and you're just a pew pewer. Yeah, where's your ammo coming from? Where you're getting your food and water, of course. But you're gonna get shot up. So where you're getting your repairs, and is that place safe to go back to? Those are
Okay.
the big things. And someone who can rearm and refuel their ships a lot more efficiently than you is gonna win, no matter how bad they are at flying.
Essay?
I mean, I'd agree with all that, and I'd also add on there like, so going pew pew is fun. It's I love flying a fighter. I think it's a lot of fun. But the reality is that fighters have very little range. They're usually based off of other ships or planetoids. They don't have the ability to really go out there and distance themselves. So if you want to become a fighter pilot in Pyro, you better align yourself with orgs or with piracy organizations or NPCs or get the reputation you need to be able to actually exist. Because once you get there, you might be able to eventually get your ship there, hire a liberator to bring your ship out, and then you can, you're there. But if no one wants, if you don't have the reputation to work with organizations or with player organizations, then you're dead in the water. You have nothing to do. So those relationships, the ability to really build up a good reputation about what you want to do and be the best at it is going to be really key. And also understanding that, as Commander said, you know, you're flying a fighter, let's just use that as a base example.
Mm.
Fighter's not going to be harvesting quantanium and processing it and providing fuel. They're not going to be manufacturing bullets or bringing those things in. They're not going to be repairing components. Like, it's going to be a matter of, as a fighter pilot, you need other players, potentially NPCs, but, in reality, making that network of, even if they're not, finding the right org and also making that network of how am I going to survive there, have a plan.
Mhm.
Having a
So
friend with a Vulcan will save your life.
yeah, or just
Yeah, the
knowing
Vulcan
some.
actually is,
Go ahead. Sorry,
I was gonna say the Vulcan's probably gonna be the most valuable ship in Pyro.
because
Like, it's just
it
the
is so
ability.
flexible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. All right. So let's hit it up with the last big topic that I wanted to talk about, which is um, based off what you see now. What should people be expecting for Star Citizen in 2 years, 3 years, the further down the line? What should they be thinking about, or what should they be expecting in terms of planning and logistics that they're going to have to start doing, or start maybe even practicing today, that'll help them for the final game? For when I say final game, obviously it's Star Citizen, but like as Star Citizen starts to roll out with things like engineering and more in depth gameplay or aspects of the gameplay, what should people start to have to worry about? Essay, go ahead.
Wow.
It's a big question, I know.
So I think the biggest part of it is, where does CIG go with their development of um, non-player economy?
Mhm.
So we know that the economy is going to be driven that way, but players will have an impact on the economy because those mechanics underneath the hood of the car are going to be really determine how the gameplay, I don't say just works, if it's fun. Like, is
Mhm.
it actually going to be something that you want to do, and can you make money? Commodity markets are great, but it's very easy to influence a commodity market. It's very easy to put your thumb on a scale, and you're going to have orgs. I mean, we've seen this in Eve and other games where people will try to corner the market on particular goods, or um, use piracy or other means to, military action to be able to drive prices up or to influence others that are transporting things or are acquiring resources. So the systems that CIG puts in place are going to be key to how will the quote unquote NPC economy work? How will it function? Um, to me, that's my biggest worry because that's going to determine, in my mind, what gameplay is if gameplay is going to be fun. Because if it's going to be something where you work to corner a market on something in a system and the system itself suddenly drives down the commodity price because it got too high and you can't make as much profit, you might have sunk enough um, UEC into that where you lose money. So those systems are going to be very important for CIG to balance, and I think that's going to be the key. The overall economy is going to be key for CIG to get right, because if they get that
Okay.
wrong, then everything's going to fall apart. As far as individual, you as a transport pilot or running an org or doing logistics as a whole, it's going to be those little mechanisms like Moby-Glass apps that would be very simple to design for load planning, very basic Tetris game, commodity market, the ability to look at prices of where you're going, what you're going to do, the ability to very simply hire crew, whether it's NPC or player crew, because that's going to be a big factor. And then actually route planning. Route planning is going to be extremely important. So what are your, from military side, it's what are your supply points, how are, what are your security pieces, all those things. But, when we have so many systems that aren't in the game yet, like environmental systems.
Mhm.
So are you trying to take a unshielded cargo ship through a radiation belt?
Like Pyro.
Are you traveling too close to the sun
Mhm.
with frozen product or whatever it's going to be? So that even though it's a small fluctuation in temperature, are you taking refrigerated goods and you are reliant on refueling on that trip because your ship cannot maintain itself? So did you hire a Starfarer to meet you out there to refuel your Hulley? So there's um, long term, those very basic underlying systems, and then the ability to have functionality within your own gameplay. CIG, if they don't add the ability to manage, like here's a really simple one that I don't know how they would do, and we know it's going to happen, but your ability for morale for your NPC crew.
Mhm.
Like, how do you know? Is it purely interaction with your crew? Is it things like their performance goes down and you just have to notice it? Those systems are all going to impact your ability to function as a logistics provider.
Sorry, deal with something. All right, Commander, your thoughts.
Yeah,
What
I
future down the line? What are people going to start have to kind of think about when it comes to logistics and such?
think the only help CIG is going to give us is the background simulation, and they're not going to tell us anything about that. So it's going to be probably Eve-like, where you have to consider everything: payrolls, your supplies, where to acquire them, how much they weigh, where to move them to, who needs it, what you're doing in the next month, to the years. So you're gonna have to consider what your economic base is, to the systems you're living in. Are you able to produce the food, or you're only mining and you have to buy food? And where's the closest system to get the food? And are you politically aligned with them to get that food? Or do you have to blow them up? And then do you have the missiles to blow them up? If you look at any military, I'll use that example because I'm one dimensional. They have they have a shop. They have like the S1, I think it goes up to like 7. Most of them have like a 1 to
9.
4. Oh, it
Yeah,
goes up
9.
to 9? I've never seen a 9. Thank
Yeah.
God. But they have a shop for every little thing. Like your S1 shops, they're just filing paperwork for the most part. They deny your leave and they make sure you don't get paid. That is their job. But you're gonna have to have someone who's probably gonna be paying your people and your NPCs, because they will leave you,
Mm-hmm.
and write on them. And then you have your S2 shop, which is your intelligence gathering. And that's going to be important for planning ops. You have to know what you're walking into. Then your 3 is allied logistics. They're making sure everything is going where it needs to be at the least amount of effort. So if you're
Operational
running
planning.
any
Yeah.
yeah, running any kind of org, you at least need those 3 shops, and they need to be absolutely ace. And in a long-term conflict, because I can see player wars in Eve going on for months to years, it's going to come down to who has their shops running better.
In Star Citizen, I
Just
mean,
Yeah, or
yeah.
Star Citizen. It's
Eve.
going to be Eve with first person.
Yeah, Eve is a good example. I think a lot of people talk about how Eve is a spreadsheet simulator, but Star Citizen is a lot more in depth than Eve in some ways, because it's not just set your macros and do everything properly. There's gonna be a lot more hands on. So all right. Well, I think we illustrated the complexities of logistics and for people to think about, especially since I know a lot of newer players are coming in and first seeing, the game and may be getting the impression that it's like, oh, this is like Star Wars, and have no idea that things like Pyro have no stations and that those stations that they do exist are going to be controlled by individual gangs where if they don't like you, they'll just shoot you. So, and as always, I always like to remind people that Pyro is 3 times the size of Stanton, with maybe at best a third of the stations out for support, refuel, and repair and such. So,
I would like to add, if I could butt in, is
Go
that
ahead.
Star Citizen's going to not be a single player playable game. When in the near future, when all these systems comes out, you're either going to need friends or you're going to be paying everyone to offload a bunch of tasks that it's no longer going to be fun.
Yeah, or getting NPCs and stuff like that. It's you're playing an adventure game, but congratulations, son, you're not actually playing an adventure game. You're playing Space Spreadsheet Simulator. You're the what is the trope where like every space adventure team is always like one job away from bankruptcy. Like the ship's falling apart. They need to find a new job. Cowboy Bebop, Firefly, even Han Solo and Millennium Falcon. It's like that's what it's going to be like. You're just going to be constantly on the edge of bankruptcy trying to figure out how you can make enough money to survive. And a lot of that is going to be just, we made 5 million, UEC doing this job. It's like, well, then you've got to pay for the million UEC for replacing all your missiles you used, a million UEC for the medical costs that you incurred, 500,000 UEC for the refueling, another, 250,000 for food that you have to do. And you're going to start seeing that profit tick away really quickly. So,
and gameplay is not going to be the same. I mean, you look at things like Pyro, for example. Pirates are not going to shoot at you with missiles.
No.
Very rarely. One, they don't want to destroy you. They want to, capture what you want, unless they're mercenaries or they're trying to, threaten you. But they're not going to want to destroy you. Secondly, missiles in Pyro are going to be extremely expensive because they're not made in Pyro and they have to get to Pyro. So, little things like that are just things in game and just core things in game right now. Where if you want to take your freelancer miss to Pyro, you can. You're gonna carry a big stick, but you're not gonna use it.
Mm-hmm. It's a last resort sort of situation.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think that's going to end for our discussion. I feel like I'm looking at the chat right now, and I've looked at the list of questions, and I think we've got. Let me check real quickly. We've got 25 questions, so we're going to be probably a lot more questions to answer as well. But that's going to be it for this section. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like the video, comment down below about your own thoughts and feelings about this topic, and make sure you're following Apex Crime Stat, right? Is what it is, or Apex?
That is correct.
Apex Crime Stat, and make sure you catch SA on the Inforunners, which you'll catch me there as well sometimes. So do those two things. So both of those links will be in the description below. And like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.